Welcome back. In today's episode, I have Sergeant Toby Coyle with the Kentucky State Police. Sergeant Coyle, tell us about your favorite Trooper Island memory and where Trooper Island all first started for you.
Well, my father, who's now the sheriff of Madison County, but he was a trooper when I was growing up, and he brought me down here as a camper three or 4 years when I was growing up back in the early 80s.
So you started off as a camper.
Started off as a camper, and then when I was in college, I donated some of my time during my summers to come down here and assist the counselors volunteering with the children, because this place means such a great deal to me. And then since I've been a trooper for 20 years, I've been coming down here for about 17 of those, helping out with the kids and just enjoying this beautiful place and magic place.
Wow. So, I mean, your whole life has basically been Trooper Island, basically.
It is. It's one of my favorite places on the planet.
Well, I'm glad you're down here with us today because, I've seen you fish down here several times, and I really want you to kind of teach the children at home and kind of show them all about the fishing pole and all the things that they need, as well as if we catch any today, maybe show them what kind of fish that we have here in Dale Hollow Lake. Just as a quick reminder, safety is always first. So if you're not a good swimmer, be sure you have on a life jacket. That way, in the event that you were to fall into the water, as you know, life jackets will bring you right back up. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to you, and hopefully we'll get some fish.
Well, I sure do hope so too. So kids and everyone watching this, just remember that you don't have to be here at Dale Hollow Lake, even though this is a great place for fish. You can do what I'm about to show you at anywhere, in a farm pond, back home, some creeks, any place basically where there's water and fish. You can do it. And the good thing about fishing is you don't need a whole lot of equipment. You need a pole, a hook, and some bait, which today we're going to be using worms and minnows. So this pole is a Zebco 33, just your standard fishing pole. You can get it at Walmart or Myers or any places that sell stuff for about $30 to $35. This is just like that you would get it right from the store. The first thing that you need to do is you need to push the release, which allows the spool to release the fishing line. And like I said, most of the ones that you buy from a department store already has the fishing line already ran through it. And so these are called the eyelets of the pole. So when you hear the term rod and reel, what you spin or what actually reels the fish in is called the reel, and this long straight shaft here is called the rod. So the rod contains eyelets on those. And so what the purpose of the eyelets is, while you're reeling it in, it keeps the fishing line in a straight without getting tangled up, and it also keeps it so you can reel the fish in. So like I said, the first thing you do is push the button, which releases the string, and then you just run it through the eyelets. And I'm gonna have to turn this around just a little bit. Wind got me. That's one thing about fishing that you always need to have, no matter if you're trying to run your fishing line or sitting there waiting for the big one to bite, is patience. It doesn't always go as planned, as you just saw. So you run it through, then when you get to the top one, you pull yourself a little bit down, probably about a foot and a half, which gives you some room to work. And we'll lay the rod and reel back down. Then you can take a hook. Now they make different size hooks. The size hooks depends on the kind of fish you're using. If you're trying to catch a shark or a catfish or something huge, then obviously you would want a huge hook. But today we're going to be trying to catch some bass, some largemouth bass, some smallmouth bass, some crappie, panfish, sunfish, something, bluegill, something of that nature. So we're just going to use just a normal size hook. And there are many different ways that you can tie a hook. The way that I was taught was you run it through, and if you can see it, at the end of the hook there's a little eye. So So you run it through the eye, and then I give myself about 3 to 4 inches overhang. And then just like tying a shoe, I take it over and under, and then I give it a pull. And once it's pulled, I take both strings in one hand, I take the hook, and then my favorite number is 5. That's the way I was taught, so I spin it 5 times. Then I take my line and I tie it again in a knot, over and under. I pull it down, and then just for good measure's sake, I tie it one more time. Then I take the longer end that's still attached to the rod and reel, and I give it a pull. It pulls the slack out. I pull it straight down. As you can see, there's a little bit of overhang left on this. So I take a pair of needle nose pliers, or you can use fingernail clippers, a pocket knife, and you cut it where there's just a small amount left. The reason that you just want to leave just a small amount is because the fish can actually see that from underwater, so you don't want it sitting there trying to not let them bite your bait. So once we have the hook on, I'm going to show you how to put a sinker on. Now, if you can see this is just a typical sinker, split shot sinker. You go up about 4 inches from the hook, you put it through, you squeeze it down, you take your needle nose pliers once again, you press it down so that way it don't move. And you don't want it right on your hook, you want it up about 3 to 4 inches. And then this is a floater. There's also bobbers. Floaters and bobbers serve the same purpose. You put them on the same general way. This type of floater, it has a weight on one end of it. As you can see, the metal part down here has some weight into it. So that always goes on the bottom. You don't want it on top or it will sink. So you want the weight on the bottom of it, which is down in the water first. And so depending on what depth that you want to fish, generally when it's very, very hot outside and it's getting to the summer months, most fish get close to the banks or they get close to the top where the water, where they like to be. So we're going to fish about 4 foot. So I have released, I've hit my release button. I've released about 4 or 5 feet. And I'm going to put the floater, you press the top of the button, which will release the hook. It hooks on there, and then you attach the top part of it the same way. And then it's on there. So as you can see here, I've got about 4.5, 5 feet from my floater to my hook. So that's the depth that I'm going to be fishing. So once you have your rod and reel ready, you need to decide what kind of fish that you want to try to catch. So if you are going to a pay lake or someone where there's a large amount of catfish, there's different kinds of bait people uses, all the way from chicken livers to peanut butter balls, to dough balls, to I've even seen people use bologna. I wouldn't recommend that. I would probably recommend that for yourself to eat it, but some people use it. Today, we're going to be using minnows and worms. So there's 2 different ways that you can bait a minnow. This minnow here, as you can see, is a pretty good size. But there's 2 different ways that you can bait this minnow. One way is, or hook the bait. One way is take the minnow and hook it through its eye. So you push it right through its eye, and then there you have it that way. Other people prefer to hook it through its tail. So you push it through its tail and you let it hang. Now the good thing about using live bait is it attracts the fish a whole lot faster because it's down there doing its own thing. If this minnow was down under the water right now, what it would be doing is it would be trying to swim away and get off the hook. And as it's shaking, it's attracting the fish. Same way if it was hooked through its eye. Either one is perfectly acceptable ways to hook a minnow. So, as I said, there's many different forms of bait that you can use. Here we have mealworms. You can use earthworms. My kids love going out after a rainy day or after it's been raining, go out playing in the dirt. We have a container that they just grab a bunch of as many earthworms as they can find and throw them in there, and we keep them until we go fishing. So kids, you don't need to be scared of the worms. They're not going to bite you. But as you can see here, it's just a small mealworm. I'm going to take it. Now these are a little bit, I guess, trickier to run a hook through than the eye was, or the minnow was. So you take your hook, you hold it up here at the top so your hands don't get anywhere around the sharp part of the hook. You take and you run it right through the end of it. You push it through. Once it starts going through, you take your time so as you don't poke yourself in the finger with the hook, and you just keep running it around. So as you can see, I've hooked it through the end of it. I kept pushing it around, and I have now hooked it through the head. So that is how you hook a worm. And if you have a mealworm, or a red worm or an earthworm, those worms are a lot bigger. Some of them can even be that long. You can rip those in half and just use half the worm, put half the worm on the hook, and then use the other half for your next big catch. So now we have everything ready to attempt to catch a fish. So the next to the last phase, I guess, is the casting phase. And the casting phase is very important. Here you can see that we still have our floater or bobber on our pole. You do not want to reel it up all the way up to the top of the eyelets, as you can see that I have done there. That's a no-no. So what you want to do is you want to reel it up enough where it's about 1 inch or 2 inches before you get to the eyelets. That will give you a much more smooth throw. Something else that you need to be aware of is your environment. If you're fishing on a boat, for instance, and there's a bunch of trees or anything above you, you can't cast very high. Here on the dock at Trooper Island, we have this dock that I'm beside. So I need to be aware of what's above me and below me so as the hook does not get stuck on any part of it. And as you can see, here is the spool release, as I discussed earlier. So I'm going to bring my pole back, and I'm going to have to bring it back sideways because I can't come above my head, or when I release, I will hit the top of the roof. So I'm going to bring it back side arm, and as my arm gets to about right, almost in front of me, I'm going to press the release button and flick my wrist, and my cast should go out there. So we come back here, we maintain a good grip at the bottom of the rod, release the button, and it goes out there. So now, because the release is still engaged, I give it 1 click of the reel, set it down or hold it. Now it's the last phase, setting and waiting. Hopefully we'll catch us a fish here in a minute. So as you can see, I'm starting to get a little bite on it. You jerk it, and then you reel it in. Now, something you don't want to do is when you get it right here, you don't want to reel it back up to the floater, like I said earlier. So once you get it close, you grab it by the line, you bring it straight up, and then you grab it by the mouth. And when you grab it by the mouth, what it does is it paralyzes the fish. So you can reach in and you can get your hook out. And by grabbing it, like I did at the very, very bottom of the mouth with a tight grip with your thumb and your finger, like I said, it completely freezes the fish so it doesn't flap around. And get it, you pull the hook out. Now what I always do on my first catch is I give it a little kiss. That way it brings good luck. Now something important that you need to know about the fish. This fish here is a crappie. Hopefully we'll catch a few more here after a while and I can show you what different kinds of fish are. But this is the gills where it breathes. Now this part of the fish right here, the fins, and here, those are sharp. So you don't want to just grab them with your hand. Grab it by this. Now, if the fins are laying backwards, and some people can take their hand once you get brave enough, if you take your hand and you rub it backwards, that allows the fins to lay backwards and you won't get finned. I think Trooper Jonathan Biven has brought some friends here with us. Let's see if I can assist them and see if they can catch some fish like this.
Okay, Sergeant Cole, what did you and the kids come up with today? What'd you catch?
Well, we have 5 or 6 good sized fish in here today. We'll grab one.
Some help here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So right here is, it's got some meat to it here.
Now what kind of fish is that?
This is a largemouth. You can see why it's called a largemouth because of the massive mouth it has. Now this is in the bass family. You can also tell by the design that's right down its back.
They're not gonna hurt you. I just want to throw it out there.
Well,
they're not gonna hurt you, I promise.
I got it. You can also see by in its mouth how it looks. Now the smallmouth, which is also part of this family, has a much smaller mouth. But this is a largemouth bass. This here is a really, really, really nice crappie. This is one of the bigger crappies that I've ever. Which one of y'all caught that? Was it you, Lily? Did you catch this fish?
Did you catch that, Lily? Good job. So that's a crappie.
This is a crappie. So you can see that it looks much different than the largemouth bass. It does have a bigger mouth, but the one detail about the crappie different than the largemouth or the smallmouth bass is that the crappie mouths have almost a paper-like mouth. So you have to be very careful when you hook them. If you pull too hard, you'll pull it right through its mouth. But this, like I said, this is a crappie.
And that's good eating.
Crappies to me is the best eating fish they can.
All right.
And then the other two, there's 2 more crappies in here and 1 more largemouth bass. And then what we will do, we will clean these later and we'll eat them after a while.
That sounds great. So kids, this is my challenge to you. Go out, if you haven't caught a fish before and you plan on taking the skills that you've learned today, show us your fish.
We would love to see them.
Absolutely. Upload that to the Trooper Island Facebook page using the hashtag #VirtualTrooperIsland. If you don't have an opportunity to go fishing, we have a downloadable activity where you can actually make your own fish. But until next time, we need you to remember to stay safe, be smart, and make wise choices.
Thank you all.